Hey, if you have a project that needs reliable cryptocurrency data, check out blocktap.io. Blocktap.io is a universal cryptocurrency API. You can get historical prices for Bitcoin and other digital assets that you can use to build charts and do market analysis. Blockchain data is also indexed, so you can get transaction statistics, address balances, and more for Bitcoin and other networks. Blocktap.io is free for personal use, and you don't even need to create an account to access the API. To get started, try some of the example queries on the homepage at blocktap.io. Again, that's blocktap.io, blocktap.io, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Woo, let's get back to the show.
Keeping your text messages protected from hackers and eavesdroppers has become a major issue. The government says it occasionally needs access to some of these messages to investigate criminals and terrorists, but tech companies see that as a potential violation of privacy. Your text messages are protected using what's called end-to-end encryption. This encryption happens whenever you send a secure text message from your smartphone. Here's how end-to-end encryption works to keep your data private while in transit. Your phone has two unique keys that encrypt and decrypt messages. These are called public and private keys. Your public key is shared with other people, and it's used as part of the encryption protocol. Your private key is only on your device and is never shared. When two people want to securely chat, they use a combination of public and private keys to create a temporary shared key. Let's look at how this works. Alice sends Bob a message which simultaneously causes an exchange of public keys. Both Bob and Alice use the other person's public key combined with their own private key to create a temporary shared key. They then use this shared key to encrypt messages to each other, and their public keys are used to confirm that those shared keys are authentic. The shared keys are being erased and regenerated constantly, which ensures that Bob and Alice's conversation cannot be decrypted in the future. An eavesdropper could see that Alice and Bob exchanged messages. But because the eavesdropper doesn't have Alice or Bob's shared key, these messages can't be decrypted. Some people believe that tech and telecom companies should provide what's called backdoor access to these encrypted messages. There are two types of backdoors. The first type is a list of private keys that would allow the company access to encrypted messages, so they could deliver these messages to an agency such as the FBI. There are two problems with this method. One, if this list is hacked or compromised, every person's private key is up for grabs. Two, if this system is abused, you, the user, would have no idea that someone is accessing your data. The second type of backdoor is for tech companies to deliberately build a weakness or flaw into the encryption formula that would allow law enforcement to access the messages on a case-by-case basis. The problem with this method is that hackers might eventually find a way to exploit those weaknesses too. At the core of this whole debate is the very thorny issue of personal privacy versus national security. It's one that society, tech companies, and the government are still trying to decrypt.
Accessing historical database. Year 2020. The tech giants become aware of the greatest threat to their corporatist domination. An obscure science and tech podcast becomes a major factor in a peaceful open source revolt against the military Silicon Valley industrial complex. The podcast, Sovryn Tech. Its host, Dr. Brian Sovryn. The tech giants tried to stop Sovryn Tech. They can't.
Woo! Hotter than hell, baby. Actually, no, it's not. It's like 9 degrees outside. What the hell am I talking about? Woo. But it is the hottest tech show in the world, baby. Right here, Sovryn Tech, ready to get into all that action. So much news to cover this week. But, actually, this episode's coming out a day late. I don't know what the hell happened. I talked about this on the recent Q&A on Zomia 1. Of course, if you want to become a member of the Zomia 1 Underground and get exclusive audio content as well as access to the Q&As, you get to ask me questions, even though you can send in content via Twitter and all other places, which actually we're going to cover some content sent in, commented on the Podbean app. Some stuff sent in to me via email, bbs@sovryntech.com, as well as a couple stories that got shared with me on Twitter. Of course, find me on Twitter at SovrynTech, Sovryn Tech. But yeah, you can join the Zomia 1 Underground to go to zomia1.com, and you get to take part in the Q&As that happen every single week. And again, there is literally, the archives are insane of thousands of hours of content only behind that paywall, and you can get behind that paywall for as little as, what's the cheapest one, a couple bucks? You can do a lot more, and many do, but and it's there for you. Jump on it. But I talked about this on the recent Q&A, so I don't want to spend a ton of time like retreading things here, even though we are going to get into a couple subjects that I mentioned on the Q&A that I said, well, I want to get into it on a proper Sovryn Tech, because I think they're important for, again, the important stuff I'll never put behind a paywall. I always want to make sure important shit is getting out to every single listener that wants it. And the thousands and thousands of you, you deserve it. So anyway, longtime listeners know this about me, but I'm a bit of a mutant. We're all individuals, so one could argue we're all different. We're all mutants in our own way. But I'm a bit of a medical mutant, because my average running body temperature is significantly lower than the average human being, which, just proves that I'm a cold-hearted bastard. No, I'm kidding. No. But no, really, I run about 4 degrees lower than the average person. The average person runs at about 98.6, 98.7, something like that, degrees Fahrenheit. My average body temperature is 94.2 to 94.6, depending upon the day. I've been that way my whole life. It's just a weird thing. And I have had researchers, look into this, professionals, and including some friends, and they basically suggested to me, and of course this brings up a point we've brought up many times on Sovryn Tech, that really especially Western medicine does not take into account the fact that we are individuals, and so much of what gets recommended through big pharma and whoever the fuck else is often based on an average, but then none of us are that average, especially medically. So anyway, the suggestion goes is that I'm a little bit of a medical marvel in that bacteria and other things don't exactly exist inside me very well. So this is their explanation for why I basically never get sick. And more or less, I really don't. I almost never ever get sick. But somehow, last week, did I get sick? I mean, it was bad. Again, we got a lot of great stuff to get into, all kinds of tech news, all kinds of hotness. We're going to get into it. It was really, really bad. And then, unfortunately, because this week we planned on having, of course, the absolutely wonderful and inimitable and brilliant and beautiful Ellen Stallone, love of my life, on the show. But she got sick. I mean, I don't know what the hell happened to us. I don't know if we were just, if it was too much all night long, like we just had a little too much fun on a weekend, you know what I mean? And it brought our immune systems down or something. Hell, I don't know. But we got sick like you would not believe. Fortunately, we are, and a lot of you sent in your well wishes, and I appreciate that. Those that heard on Zomia 1 Underground content. But we're both recovering nicely. But because of that, we're going to have to reschedule to have Ellen on next week, most likely. But we do plan on having her on the Q&A this week, which will be a great time because there's some questions that I think her particular expertise would play well with. So we'll get into that. But if you're not going to hear it if you don't join the Zomia 1 Underground. You got to jump on that, got to get on it. Be there. I guarantee you it is worth the money that is asked. I guarantee you that. So anyway, So that's what's going on. That's why we're a little bit of a day late, because also, like we're both recovering and kind of taking care of each other. The sick helping the sick. I mean, we're both mentally ill, but anyway, let's get into a little bit of the foreplay here, shall we? A little bit of the little stories going on in tech news, though one could argue many of them are not so little. In fact, some of these are jabbing some people right in the pocketbook, and well, I can't necessarily say I have a problem with it, but we'll talk about it. In fact, speaking of Twitter, so I've actually had a conversation, and in fact, I'm kind of glad I didn't have the conversation, because a new Twitter feature that has been slowly rolling out, I still think it needs a little bit better implementation than what it has. But a new Twitter feature that is slowly rolled out is kind of solving the problem that I was originally having with Twitter. I mean, look, I think social media is an absolute net negative to the human condition. Okay, you can say, oh, but it helped me with this, and oh, I found the love of my life, and whatever else, and blah, whatever the fuck, which, I mean, you probably, I don't know, a year or two later, maybe you found out, whoa, actually, this person is not the love of my life, and they ain't half as cool as they thought they were on social media. Yeah, that's a pretty good bet that happened, didn't it? Anyway, regardless, social media, and we could go down the reasons, but we don't have to here. We've already covered it many times in the show. Social media, in my opinion, is an absolute net negative. In fact, I think it's driving us as a species in general quite insane. And I think that this new feature that Twitter has rolled out is very much speaking to why I have said, and it addresses why, my reasons for saying, and they are very simple biological ones. It's not even necessarily a matter of privacy concerns or things like this, so certainly we're going to cover some of those in this episode. Okay, but why it is such a problem, because it is antithetical to the way we as human beings function. Okay, in brief, the issue I had, or the issue I've been having with Twitter, and I'm not going to get into the big conversation, because like I said, this new feature, which is called Topics, by the way. I know I just keep talking about this new feature, not telling you what it is. It's called Topics. We'll talk about it. The issue I had to do with is that if you see the trending box, which on Facebook was an absolute fail and was not as, dare I say, honest, though it's debatable how honest it was on Twitter. Okay, but Facebook had this, and eventually they got rid of it because they knew it was a worthless feature. With Twitter, like, it'll show, say, hashtags or a certain subject that's coming up, whatever. Now, part of the problem with this trending box, again, I'm not going to get into the big issue, or have the big conversation that I planned on, because now it's not moot, but it's kind of moot. So this trending box, here's what'll happen is something, I don't know, like just. It could be anything, and I'm just going to toss out an example that's not real. I know it's not real, but I'll just put it out there. For example, in the trending box on Twitter, it would come up with, and it would say Buck Rogers. And I would see that, and I would go, oh, like, oh, what's all this about? And I mean, first off, I'd probably be thinking, oh shit, did Gil Gerard or Aaron Gray die? And I'd be like, oh, fuck. Because I'm a huge fan of the 1980 Buck Rogers. I mean, I also dig Buck Rogers from back in the day, good old Buster Crab, the whole thing, from the 30s and so on. But regardless, like, oh no, or maybe the worst thing would be, oh fuck, they're going to remake Buck Rogers. God damn it, don't do it, but they're gonna. Like, that's what would happen. But so there's an expectation that I think anybody who's remotely familiar, say with Buck Rogers, what they would expect there to be when they click on the trending box on Twitter, okay, on the right-hand side, generally. Or it's the Explore tab if you're on the app, on smartphones or whatever. But anyway, there's an expectation of probably what that's going to be. I mean, in the idea of it being a remake, not outlandish. The idea of it being Gil Gerard dying, yeah, unfortunately, that's highly likely. I hate to say that, but, oh, man. Anyway, but here's what would actually happen when you click on it. When you actually click on it, it would probably turn out to be some story about something from K-pop, Korean pop, and some stupid, I don't know, fucking asshat BTS bullshit. What I don't know. I don't care. All right. And I tried. I listened to it's like, oh, everybody fucking loves K-pop. And I listen to K-pop and I go, I don't know what the fuck these people are talking about. This is the most banal. In fact, it's banal. This shouldn't even be possible for something that's banal. It is the most, it's so banal that I dare say it's malicious. That music. It's terrible. So, but that's what it ended up being. And basically, I kind of got to the point, like when going through the trending box, again, this isn't the big subject, but this is just part of it. I kind of got to the point that I'm like, okay, so basically Twitter is just all about K-pop because anything in the trending box was about K-pop every single time, unless it was somebody that actually did die. And it was the most annoying fucking thing, especially because things would come up again. Buck Rogers is not a real example. It's just a case, or I mean, it's just Anyway, that never really happened. But it would be something that I would absolutely recognize, and might even be a fan of or something. But then somehow it turned into, and it would be somehow ended up getting used as something for K-pop. It was insane. Every time that would happen, and you just see a bunch of stupid pictures, and oh man. So anyway, this speaks to an overall, problem. I mean, Twitter is such a fire hose of information, and none of their algorithmic changes have done a goddamn thing. And that's why I think they've come out with their new feature, which is called Topics. So what you can do is in the app, and it'll show up after you set it up in the app. It shows up on the website as well. But when you go into the app and you bring up, the sidebar with the hamburger menu and everything, on the left-hand side, it'll say Topics. And it's still a little bit of a problem, but basically it will recommend some topics to you, or as you're going through your feed, there will be topics that will come up. Like for me, a couple of topics that I've already chosen, and like, again, you can't really enter them. You can't choose them, which I think is a problem. And there isn't a tab yet, anyway, that will just let you look at those, probably because they're still building out this algorithm. Okay, but I have Star Wars and Star Trek. Those were two topics recommended to me. Now, once you select these on Twitter, what will happen is that Twitter will start to show you people that you don't even follow, whatever, but people that just happen to be in the algorithm, popular tweets that are covering the subject or the topic that you have selected. Now, you can turn off following these topics by going to the topic tab again, and you can turn off Star Wars or Star Trek or whatever. Now, and I'm sure this exists for a whole bunch of other topics, and I'm sure K-pop is one of them. But the fact that Twitter felt like this was needed, I think speaks to, well, issues that, like I said, in fact, that have to do with human biology of why we have such a hard time with social media. And I mean, it just turns into, again, a complete net negative. For example, like I think the fact that Topics is basically Facebook groups. Again, at the end of the day, I mean, it's a fancier version of it to some degree, but it's basically Facebook groups, right? This is, and in fact, I said this years ago on Sovereign Tech, that the one feature Twitter really needs to be able to take on Facebook is groups. Well, Topics seems to kind of be pointing in that direction. But it's not only a feature. I mean, really, in Twitter, I think came up with this because what you have is that you hear this on, if you listen to other podcasts that like have to do, say if you listen to podcasts that are only about Star Wars, you will often hear on those other podcasts where they will use a phrase, like they will say on Star Wars Twitter, they were talking about this. And that's kind of the point, is that Twitter has gotten so insane that now people have, even without the topics feature, people have basically started to segregate Twitter into subjects anyway. Like there's Bitcoin Twitter. I've heard that phrase go around. There's obviously K-pop Twitter, which is just fucking stupid, but okay. And look, it's nothing against, Koreans whatsoever. Okay. It's just, it's horrible music. And I've been to Korea actually. And I don't understand most people there that I met. In fact, actually I was going to move to Korea, at one point, recently, in recent years actually. But when I was there, everybody just listens to 80s metal. Like, I don't even think they listen to pop, but I guess maybe just American musicians, just like they can't make movies anymore. They don't know how to make music anymore. So they're just, I don't know, they're trying to import some cool points, right? Make K-pop a thing. It's kind of like the musical version of anime, which, hey, I love anime. I mean, fucking love it. Especially hentai. Whew, there we go. But anyway, yeah. So, this whole thing with Twitter topics, I mean, Twitter has become a beast that cannot be tamed. And so people are mentally segregating this. And even though this doesn't necessarily have to do with people themselves, it really comes down to something that I've brought up many times, which I consider to be an absolutely scientifically proven biological principle, and that is the Dunbar number, or Dunbar's number. Of course, a concept that was collated by Dr. Robin Dunbar, which basically suggests that humans can really only have meaningful interactions with anywhere between 5 to, depending upon what research you go with, we'll say 5 to 250 people. Okay, and there are different levels within that. But people can't handle the amount of shit going on Twitter. And so they are breaking it up, not by people, because then you might miss out on some amazing fucking tweet. Woo. But they're breaking it up by subjects. But it's still a matter of the Dunbar number. But I mean, I still, this solves some things, but at the same time, it creates whole other problems. Because here's the thing. So now that you have topics on Twitter, I am seeing the most asinine. I am seeing the absolute worst of humanity. Because I'm following some of these subjects. I mean, longtime listeners of Sovryn Tech know this is no secret. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, huge fan. Have been long before Disney bought it out. As far back as I can remember. I'm 38 years old. I can remember when I was 3. Had a very seminal moment around Star Wars. I'm not going to get into it here. I've talked about it on past podcasts. But my point being is that I've been a Star Wars fan, and I never stopped being a Star Wars fan, unlike other people. I rode through the dark times. I do a Star Wars podcast with my man Robin Freebeard, okay, on Zomia 1, called TIE Fighter Renegades, and I've been doing that for years. I read every Star Wars book, every Star Wars comic book. I know very few super fans that really do that. All right, I am as hardcore as they come when it comes to Star Wars. So it's not a surprise that Twitter would have me, follow Star Wars topics, or Star Wars as a topic on Twitter, right? But basically, Star Wars fandom has its own version of K-pop, which is Reylos. These people who are just fucking obsessed with a romantic relationship, even though it's very clear on screen that it's an abusive, and a deleterious and horrible one that nobody should model, between Kylo Ren, or Ben Solo, depending how you want to go about that, and Rey. I didn't say her last name because, I don't know, I guess maybe there's still people who haven't seen Rise of Skywalker, but whatever. So, these fucking Reylos, I mean, I can't stand them. And I almost wanted to turn off the topic for Star Wars. So, it's not really helping at all. Like, this whole topic thing is just, while it is solving some aspects of the problems with Twitter, like how is it solving the trending box? Well, if you could get to the point, and they really should make it to where you can just have everything related to the topic of Star Wars show up like in a list. I mean, they've always had the list feature, but you get my point. The topic tab should take you to your topics and have only your topics come up. But that solves the trending box by, like, say if you're just following a topical Twitter, you could only get trends within, say, Star Wars that would show up in the trending box, right? Or with Star Trek, or with Bitcoin, or, which would actually with Bitcoin, it'd be very helpful, or whatever. Okay. Like it can be a really, really great feature. At the same time, ironically, I mean, and it's scary too, because, and I don't know if it's because of the topic feature that suddenly this has become such a thing, but I mean, like, these fucking Reylos, they'll say the most asinine shit you'll ever read in your life, and they get thousands of likes and retweets. And all of them have the same, they all have, for the profile picture, they have Adam Driver, as Kylo or whatever, as their profile picture, and it's in their name and everything, and it's the most pathetic fucking thing look, I identify as a nerd. I have literally bled for science fiction. You understand? Like, because when I was a kid, if you were into sci-fi, even if you were into Star Wars, if you're in Star Wars just a little too much, you got your ass beat for it by, the whatever bully, happened to be around. Okay. So point being, I've literally bled for this shit. So don't give me any crap that like somehow I don't, like that. I'm just saying it is ridiculous to identify with a non-existent, minuscule relationship, evidential relationship, or as in there's very little evidence relationship. Again, it doesn't even exist in this little franchise, in this little trilogy, in this tiny little aspect. I mean, it's funny because I seem to remember when Star Wars fans used to make fun of people for being into Boba Fett. Well, at least Boba Fett fucking exists. Like, this fucking railover. Oh, man. And so the irony is that, this topic feature, it was supposed to solve a problem, but in some aspects, it's just created an even bigger one, because now I am just, algorithmically seeing all of these morons. I have to stop calling everybody morons. They are, but I know I've got to stop calling them that. Okay. I see all of these fans. Okay, there, that's better. I see all of these fans, and it makes me, in fact, it not only makes me hate Twitter, which I already do, but it not only makes me hate Twitter, but it also fucking makes me hate Star Wars, because these people are nuts. This does not speak well. I could get into a big subject around, the world is in such a shit shape, not ship shape, shit shape. The world is in such shit shape that, yeah, people are just trying to exist in these, created franchises and fantasy worlds that they can share with other people or something. And I can understand that. Fuck, I can even appreciate it. But like, to identify with a fucking relationship that doesn't even exist. Wow. Yeah, the internet's connected us all, right? And again, like we've said many times on this show, just like how plumbing, when the Romans came up with plumbing, it was this incredible, ingenious invention, a wild advancement that you would say benefited their lives. However, they were lead pipes and it was literally driving them insane. Okay, well, guess what? The internet pipes are clearly driving us fucking insane. Wow. Anyway, we got to change that. A step in that direction. we have more to get into in the foreplay here. A step in that direction. Thank you for listening to me about that. This Raylo thing is really driving me it's driving me insane. I can't do it. A step in the right direction would be, of course, to use an operating system. I know this is not the best of segues, but whatever, we're running with it. Tails. Big fan of Tails. Of course, that is, Tails is, kind of a subsidiary of the Tor project. It is their operating system that you put onto a USB drive and, you boot it up. Now, here's a problem with Tails. Tails requires you, it's not really a problem, but if you don't know what you're doing, or if you're not that technically minded, and it's pretty clear the Tor project, as we've talked about on this show throughout the year of 2019 and 2018, the Tor project is really trying to get everybody using Tor, and I completely applaud that. Tails requires you to turn off secure boot. So you got to get into the UEFI or BIOS. Secure boot is specifically a UEFI feature. So you've got to get into the UEFI of your computer and turn off secure boot. Now, this is, it's not a difficult thing to do, especially when it comes to getting into a UEFI or BIOS. But it does potentially create problems. Okay. And there's a security risk involved. And the whole reason you're using Tails is so that you don't have to worry, is for, I should say, not so you don't have to worry, but it is so you can have more security. Turning off secure boot would seem to be antithetical to that, right? Also makes it difficult because one of the beauties of beautiful things about Tails is that you can, say, go up to somebody else's computer and use it temporarily or something, or a workstation, whatever. Okay. And use it with Tails. So But if it has secure boot on, then, that creates problems, and maybe the person has the UEFI password protected, and so you're just never going to boot into Tails. It's a real issue. So they are working on, this year, the team behind Tails, in making Tails able to boot up with secure boot on. This is an essential feature to add in. I'm very excited that they are doing that. I think I left it in the show notes for a few episodes ago, but I'll just bring it up here. That is something that is coming, so if you've been turned off by Tails for that reason, get ready, and I will certainly announce it once they've got it licked and figured out. And we've gone up a couple versions too. We're up to version 4.2 now, so make sure you have it updated. There have been some pretty critical fixes over the past couple versions of Tails, so jump on that. Now, another interesting story, and this one actually got sent in to me by a Sovryn Tech listener, and very worthwhile to jump on and talk about. In this story actually came from a great listener, absolutely great listener, who shared it with me on Twitter. In fact, not long before this is getting recorded. This story is incredibly fresh. Just today, January 21st, 2020. I'm not going to read the whole story here because we're just in the foreplay, but I want to talk about this. Here it is from Reuters, exclusive. Apple, this is the headline: Apple dropped plan for encrypting backups after FBI complained, say sources. So effectively what happened here is Apple was going to implement end-to-end encryption, client-side encryption, backups of your data that goes to iCloud. That way, when it goes to iCloud, no one can read it because the encryption was, again, done end-to-end, which is how you want encryption done. If you listen to the audio at the top, you have a little more understanding around that. Okay, but the FBI, cried foul, and Apple caved in. This is important to bring up, and in fact, there's a couple lines in the story that I want to talk about. Okay, this is important to bring. In fact, you know who said it best? Pavel Durov, who's the head of Telegram. He came out and said, and I know Pavel Durov's history, folks, but guess what? He's like me. He's an anarchist. Woo! All right. Anyway. He came out, he put, in fact, because he has, Durov's channel on Telegram, where he puts out various announcements and everything. It's actually usually very interesting reading, because I think he's an interesting guy. And he came right out and said, iCloud is now officially a surveillance tool. That's straight up what he said. And he's not wrong, because Apple played ball with the FBI on this one, folks, and said, okay, fine. We wanted to give our customers this end-to-end encryption, but the FBI doesn't like it, so and we want to play ball with the FBI. And in the Reuters story, this is one of the interesting lines in this, because I remember a couple years ago when I was talking at a conference and someone raised their hand. And, I was giving a talk about privacy and security and all this, the usual shtick that I often do and people want me to talk about. So fine, even though there might be other things I want to talk about, but I get it. Okay. So anyway, I was talking and I asked the crowd, the audience, I said, so who here thinks that Apple gives a shit about your security and privacy? And people raise their hand, and I'm like, okay, so, a few people did. And so I'm like, all right, give me an example of where they did that. And they brought up the San Bernardino case. And I knew they were going to do that. Everybody does that because, again, most people don't read beyond a headline, right? Or they don't keep tabs on a story. Granted, keeping tabs on these stories is kind of my job. That's what I do as a tech journalist and when I do a podcast. And I said, no. Apple had no problem working. The problem with the reason Apple couldn't do anything or couldn't do as much with the San Bernardino shooting case was that the FBI fucked it up. They tried breaking in too many times, and then there was nothing that Apple could do. But if they hadn't tried to get into the iPhone so many times, so it was an iPhone 5 or something like that. If they hadn't tried that, Apple would have unlocked it for them. They said that. So it's not like Apple isn't going to play ball with the government and protect you, by not. I mean, no, they will gladly do it. In fact, here's the line from the Reuters story. There's a link in the show notes if you want to find it for episode 259 here. It says Apple did in fact turn over the shooter's iCloud backups in the Pensacola case and said it rejected the characterization that it has not provided substantive assistance behind the scenes, and that's an even different shooting situation. Okay, that's the Pensacola shooting, which is bringing up a lot of this different stuff and what is with the Saudi Air Force officer, right? Okay, so in this case, they absolutely did hand it over. It was not like the San Bernardino case where there was nothing they could do about it. And then here's this line: behind the scenes, Apple has provided the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation with more sweeping help not related to any specific probe. So, and it goes on a little bit. An Apple spokesman declined to comment on the company's handling of the encryption issue or any discussions they had with the FBI. The FBI did not respond to requests for comments on any discussions with Apple. Of course, they don't want to do that. More than 2 years ago, here's the kind of the story here. More than 2 years ago, Apple told the FBI that it planned to offer users end-to-end encryption when storing their phone data on iCloud, according to one current and 3 former FBI officials and 1 current and 1 former Apple employee. Under that plan, primarily designed to thwart hackers, Apple would no longer have a key to unlock the encrypted data, meaning it would not be able to turn over material to authorities in a readable form, even under court order. In private talks with Apple soon after, representatives of the FBI's cybercrime agents and its operational technology division objected to the plan, arguing it would deny them the most effective means for gaining evidence against iPhone-using suspects, the government sources said. When Apple spoke privately to the FBI about its work on phone security the following year, the end-to-end encryption plan had been dropped, according to the 6 sources. Reuters could not determine why exactly Apple dropped the plan. So, I mean, here's the thing. Now, I understand why Apple would do this. Again, they're not doing it because they care about... Apple's not doing it because they're anti-government. Apple's not doing it because they're worried about a tyrant coming into office or anything like that. That's not a concern that Apple has. Apple's concern is a monetary bottom line. I'm not saying there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but let's be very clear that they are not coming at this from an ethical issue. They are coming at this from a monetary one. As in, this is what we call data minimization. It is a practice that every security researcher that talks to any company in the digital space, which who the fuck isn't, should be recommending, is that don't collect more data about people, collect less, because the less you have, the less you are legally and financially on the hook for. Okay? Now, there are companies who are willing to take the risk because the amount of money that they can make from the data that they collect by selling it to third parties, and they do, that money, okay, is worth it compared to if, whatever, they run into an Equifax situation. But let's be clear here on that. With Apple, it was just a different story. It made more, again, they don't need to make money off of selling your data to third parties, right? So Apple could do this because it didn't hurt their bottom line, and in fact, it protected it very much. Okay? But just be 100% clear. This has nothing to do with them caring about your privacy, has nothing to do with any of that. And clearly, they have, again, no problem whatsoever playing ball with the government. And I think Pavel Durov is spot on when he said iCloud is a surveillance tool. So, if you use was Google Drive any better? No. Go down the fucking list of them. Unless it is end-to-end encrypting things to where the company that even offers the cloud storage service can't see it themselves. It is a surveillance tool potentially. I'm not just going to knock on Apple here, but it needs to be made abundantly clear. This argument that somehow Apple gives a shit about your privacy, that somehow Apple does some kind of security right all the time, and blah, 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 is horse shit. In fact, it is a pile of horse shit that is nothing less than Jurassic. Cue the meme of Jeff Goldblum looking at the big pile of Triceratops shit saying that is a lot of shit. Apple is full. Well, now they dropped it everywhere. Apple just took one of the biggest shits we've seen since Jurassic Park. Don't tell me about any tech giant that somehow they give a rat's goddamned ass about you. Because they don't. What Apple could have denied the FBI. Apple could have said, we're going to do it anyway. Nope. They are ready to suck that government cock. They are. Look, you just Oh, and that's not a Tim Cook joke, folks, please. Okay, I didn't mean it that way. But I'm just saying, they're ready to drop on the knees and make it happen. I was going to say bend over and grab the ankles, but no, we're not going there. Anyway, there it is. So fucking bad. iCloud is a surveillance tool. Tell your friends. Now, let's move. It's not a good way to get sponsors, folks, is to say these sorts of things. But I got to say it. Someone's got to say it. Speaking of further ridiculousness, it's kind of an offhand thing, but I want to bring it up because we talked about the U.S. Space Force. You know, this the sixth branch of the military, this new branch of the military. Speaking of being on Twitter, they tweeted out, the U.S. Space Force tweeted out the Space Force uniforms, what they look like. And I guess we were all wondering because we were waiting, okay, what does their symbol look like? And when we talked about it on the show, on Sovryn Tech, we were like, well, we were wondering about some of these things. And they said that, yeah, we're still, working on those. And they showed them. And it's like... I know what you're thinking. You're expecting like, oh, these are going to be maybe all black, or maybe they'd have some like interesting star patterns on them, or, something that makes sense, right? Even though we already know, I mean, and look, let's be clear here. Like, we talked about it when we covered the development of the Space Force on the show, that the Space Force isn't exactly, the troopers that are going to get sent into space, right? But the most asinine thing, this doesn't make any sense even when you take that into consideration. They showed the uniform. The uniform's just woodland camo. I mean, it's the digital style that, that's been a thing for about 15 years now, but it's just woodland camo. And I mean, I tweeted it. I even responded to their tweet. And I was like, what are you guys planning on landing on a forest moon anytime soon? Like what the fuck is this? I mean, it was just stupid. It was... And you could say, oh, well, at least they saved money on not buying all new uniforms, because they're really just using the same uniform that fucking every other branch of the military more or less uses. And like, well, if you're interested in saving money with the military, I don't know, maybe bring a bunch of these, a bunch of the troops home from the fucking countries that you keep sending them into, or maybe, shrink the military. Hell, maybe get rid of the military entirely, because, I don't know, constitutionally, you weren't even allowed to have one a little over 100 years ago. Maybe consider that if you want to save a buck, and maybe save the environment while you're at it. I don't know. There's no worse polluter than the military, straight up. And there's certainly nobody, you're worried about welfare programs? Man, there's no bigger welfare program than the fucking U.S. military. Oh, man. And I say that as a veteran. I don't mind calling bullshit on the whole fucking war machine. Fuck it. So anyway, I saw that and it was so ridiculous. And fortunately, this is one of the areas where Twitter did all right, because everybody instantly just ripped on it, and rightfully so. Fucking rip on it. I mean, I take a special joy when the U.S. military gets insulted. I really, really do. So Twitter did do one thing right there. I talked a lot of shit, but here I'll give credit where it's due. Anyway, speaking of, we got another little Twitter story here. All right, I want to talk about this for a second. I know we're already going 40 minutes in the show. We haven't even gotten to our main story or hack stack, but we got to talk about this. Okay. I'm just going to mention it. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to bring it up. And I think it's worthwhile. So we have spent a lot of time on this show. Okay. We have spent a lot of time on this show for years covering how we need to get back to, more local storage, not relying on servers so much, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Getting to a peer-to-peer future, right? Isn't that like what a lot of us Bitcoin people are all about? Absolutely. I am. And I'm into peer-to-peer in almost every direction, but getting away from the notion of the big bad internet. We've been talking about some of the issues that come along with that, including social media, throughout this entire episode. To say nothing of the issue of cloud storage, right? Like that whole problem. And I mean, it's funny too, because it'd be easy enough for iPhones, in fact, most of them already do, to have, ridiculously sized, flash drives, but hard drives, or solid state drives, I should say, not flash. Solid state drives in them, that could hold all of your backups and photos and have, a backup on there where, there are really great local ways to solve this whole problem of what happens if something, happens to my device, blah, 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 or it dies, etc. There's ways to do it, right? But we don't. And so you run into the issues where, again, iCloud is effectively a surveillance tool. So somebody because this show runs pretty hot in libertarian circles, even though I'm wondering how many libertarians actually fucking listen to the show, because a certain popular, he wouldn't call himself libertarian, so I won't, someone who used to be popular in libertarian circles and in personal freedom circles and so on, a guy named Stefan Molyneux, who, again, credit where it's due, about a decade ago used to have some interesting things to say, and I could appreciate. That has not been true for a very long time. But his MailChimp account got shut down. Also, I found out his PayPal account got shut down. And historically, also his YouTube account had gotten shut down. Now, I covered this on the recent Q&A on Zomia 1 in depth, and much more in depth. So if you want to hear a bigger conversation around this, you can go there, go to zomia1.com, get your hookup, okay? But what really bothered me was some genuine libertarian figureheads, thought leaders, if you want to use that kind of term, came out and were just, talk about crying foul. We're crying foul saying, oh, you better go back up your MailChimp accounts and all this stuff, and your mailing lists and everything, because the mob's going to come for you, blah, blah, blah. You say the wrong thing and they are going to shut you down. Now, whether or not, that's like a reality, yeah, I see where that happens, okay? Where that kind of scenario can occur. I could get into, except for with Facebook groups, and I used to share some very risque material, it's kind of funny to me because I feel like I say some of the absolute craziest, off-the-wall, dare I say even, I wouldn't mind if you labeled it this, anti-civilization kind of things, or certainly anti-society things, that are anywhere, okay? Now, I'm not saying this as a boast, I'm just saying I think that that's a fact. And I'll say it on social media. And somehow I've never been, no one's ever tried to shut down any of my shit. No one's ever, I'm kind of baffled. Like, I am such an extreme individualist compared to even, I dare say, the most ardent libertarian. And yet somehow, somehow my accounts go unscathed. And it's not like necessarily they're unpopular. On Instagram, I've had thousands of followers on there. On Twitter, I have thousands and thousands of followers. My podcast is fairly popular as far as podcast goes. Again, we do about a little under 20,000 listeners per week. But I've never really had this issue. On Patreon, there was a point where I got labeled as adult content. Well, I am, but clearly. But regardless, never ever had the shut. No matter how crazy a thing I say, I never ever get shut down. And it's not like I'm not prepared for it. But then that's kind of the point of what I'm getting at here, is that I am prepared for the day when I can get shut down. Because as we have talked about over and over again, why we keep pushing for, the peer-to-peer future, as it were, on the show, is because when you rely upon any service that has its servers elsewhere that you don't have any control over, eventually that, you will lose control of your data, okay, in some form or fashion, or you can lose control to the service that you're using or whatever. I am absolutely prepared for that day whenever I get shut down. I'm amazed it hasn't happened yet. In fact, somebody saucy is probably going to go try and do it now. I don't know. But regardless, I am prepared for these things. If Podbean shut down my podcast, today, inside of a few minutes, I would have, the signal would not be stopped. I would have it going back out to everybody in no time, and I would get the new feed out to you, etc., probably using an email list of some type, because email is a federated technology, so it's not so easy to control unless you're using MailChimp. But the part that bothered me with this, and I'm going to read a listener email here, okay, in a second, because the part that bothered me with this is that, wait a minute. Haven't you guys been listening? Haven't you guys, gals and Z's, been listening to me? I've been warning you for the longest fucking time that it is just a matter of time before they do this to you. It would make sense, for your business, whatever the fuck you're doing online, to take control of your own reins. And we gave plenty of examples already where it was happening, where Google will shut down X and X service and so on. I mean, it was just, it's one of the most popular things we talk about during the Foreplay is when something shuts down. It's like, look, you got to roll your own, you got to eat your own dog food, as they say. And yet, whenever one of these services does their thing, you have these people coming out, oh, I can't believe they did this. This is censorship. This is blah, 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 blah. Well, you didn't know that this is going to happen? I mean, Sovryn only one of the most popular, it's not just a libertarian show, but I understand where people would label it as such. It's only one of the most popular libertarian shows on the fucking planet. How the hell did you not hear me talk about this? How the hell did you not get the message? How the hell did you not get the warning? Why the hell didn't you do something about it? And I said this on There's Only One Underground Q&A, and I'll say it here. If you are not planning for the worst with your business, and you consider yourself, oh, I am a capitalist, anarcho-capitalist, yeah, I'm the monopoly guy, I'm a capitalist. You are a shitty-ass fucking capitalist if you're not ready for this crap. And you should know better what businesses can and cannot do, and that they will shut the shit down on you, and they've got every right to, quite frankly, if you follow those kinds of concepts. How dare you complain about it? When your YouTube account gets shut down, YouTube doesn't owe you shit. MailChimp doesn't owe you shit. None of these companies owe you shit. And you cry about it like a fucking baby. I'll say it. Yeah, I'll go this far. You goddamn wuss. Every single one of you who's complaining about, oh my God, I can't believe they shut this down. The mob is coming for me. You didn't know? Where's your wonderful logic? Where's your economic logic of, oh yes, well, we're preparing for the collapse of Western civilization. We're preparing for the collapse of the economy. The US dollar is going to fall apart. That's why we need Bitcoin. We need this, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so you're planning for all this. You're planning ahead, but you make no plans whatsoever for MailChimp to shut you down or YouTube to shut you down. And then fucking Molyneux comes out on a video saying, hey, I can't get employed. What do you mean? Wait. What do you mean you can't get employed? I thought Western civilization was the best fucking thing on the planet. And I thought you were protecting it. And you were protecting it because it was worthwhile to protect. I would assume if it's worthwhile to protect, you could get employed in it and you could live in it if you lost your YouTube channel or your PayPal account. But I guess you can't. So there's either one or two possibilities here. Maybe there's three or four, but at least one or two. One is that, well, shit, the system ain't so great. In which case, you've been wrong this whole time. Or two, you're a shitty fucking capitalist. In which case, you probably shouldn't tell other people, and you shouldn't be vaunting about capitalism if you can't fucking do it right and can't understand it. And that doesn't just go to Molyneux, that goes to Tom Woods, that goes to everybody who fucking cried foul on this one. You drive me nuts. Because I'm here. You got Sovryn Tech, the Watchtower. Someone who has an understanding of history of tech, understanding of history in general, understanding to a pretty good degree, I would say. I mean, I get asked to be on other shows to talk about this from time to time, of the human condition. Maybe you should fucking listen to the show and take some of my advice and be ready for when this crap happens. But you know what? Sovryn Tech listeners who do listen are very smart people. Very, very smart people. And in fact, one of them emailed me, and I think he had a very good point to make. I'm going to read it here. This is into the email address bbs@sovryntech.com. Hey, Brian. I'm only partway through your latest Q&A regarding that racist, statist asshole Molly Butt. Woo. Maybe you'll get to it, but I have to write this while I'm thinking of it. I think he and his ilk fully know the risk they take by hitchhiking or by hitching their wagon to PayPal and other corporatist platforms. I think they are hoping to make hay by playing the victim card when they are inevitably cut off. Perhaps, like politicians, they believe they can manufacture some more, quote-unquote, moral outrage that will convert to donations and notoriety. I know it is simplistic and inaccurate to some degree, but when a lack of time or energy for proper analysis, quote, manufactured victim carding, end quote, is becoming my default answer for trying to make sense of otherwise illogical actions taken by people who are motivated by religion or conservatism. They preach personal responsibility all day, but purposely avoid responsibility for their own decisions and actions. Typical. Bingo, Daddy. Bingo. I tell you, Sovereign Tech listeners are brilliant. There it is. Frankly, I hadn't necessarily thought about that, but I think that might make some sense. Is that they do this shit on purpose to create. This is. And I know that this happens in all kinds of areas. I guess I just kind of hoped that people who claim to be about ethics, logic, libertarianism, personal freedom, all this kind of stuff, that maybe they'd be a little bit better. Maybe they wouldn't do the same trappings that the rest of fucking civilization does. But I guess not, because in the wrestling business, this is what's called cheap heat, right? You get yourself into a situation that puts you over with the crowd. And that's what's going on here. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's exactly what's going on. Fucking unbelievable. Don't cry for me, Argentina, with these asshats. You know what I mean? Don't give them the attention. They are this is the only thing that makes sense to me. Otherwise, the only other possible answer is that they're just a bunch of pragmatists. And they have no actual ethics whatsoever. In which case, you sure as fuck shouldn't listen to them. So it's either that they're pragmatists and have no ethical foundation, or they're just stupid. And for both reasons, you should not follow or listen to these people for a goddamn thing. I understand, let me be clear on this, okay? And to quote an old dear friend and hero who, we lost in recent years, Harlan Ellison. Look, and this is what he would say, look, if you follow your principles all the way, all the time, you're going to end up naked, broke, and hungry. And I get his point. And this is a very principled guy. Okay, what was it? Martin Luther King Day yesterday? This is the guy who literally marched with Martin Luther King. Okay, this is somebody who stared down the state. Do you understand Harlan Ellison was on a list of dangerous individuals by President Richard Nixon? That's how badass that guy was. Okay, so you want to talk about somebody that actually lives by their fucking principles, and come on, folks, getting banned off of MailChimp's nothing. Being on the president's watch list, now that's somebody you want to listen to, because that's somebody who's doing it fucking right, or at least pay attention to. You don't have to follow them 100%, because I certainly wouldn't follow Harlan 100% either, because he still thought government was a good idea of all ironies. But you get my point. I understand that, sometimes we do have to be a bit pragmatic. This is not one of those cases. The technologies exist outside of MailChimp, outside of PayPal, outside of Twitter, outside of go down the goddamn list of them, that we can start using now and building up a whole alternative internet and an alternative society. But these people who are supposedly thought leaders don't have the fucking sack to even try. And they just cry when the digital teat gets taken away from them. I know I want my milk. Fuckers. Anyway. All right, let's talk about sponsor quick, and then I gotta get into. We got stories we gotta get into. We gotta try and hit them hard and fast here. So, if you want to talk about this sort of stuff, a place, actually, this is the most, talk about libertarian popularity, okay? The number 27 talk show in the United States, Sovereign Tech sponsor, okay? They have easily the largest libertarian audience anywhere. They just do. They had me. Hell, I was a host on the show. It is a big fucking deal, and that is Free Talk Live. It is a show that runs 7 nights a week, 3 hours a night. You can call in. Again, it's open phones. Talk about whatever the fuck you want to talk about. You know what's amazing about that show? Well, in fact, even when I was a host, we would get calls from people in Africa, from like, little villages and all this stuff. It was remarkable. Why was that possible? Because the guys at Free Talk Live understand exactly what I'm talking about, what we've been talking about this whole time, that at any given moment, even though it's a wildly popular show, number 27 talk show in the United States, they know that at some point the plug could get pulled on them, so they have backups. You know what they're doing? They're sending the fucking signal into space, beaming it back down from satellites that covered the entire fucking planet. Now that's a backup plan. Woo! I love it. That's doing it right, baby. Pirate radio stations, all kinds of great shit going down with that, making sure that signal doesn't stop. And anytime something gets shut down, they cry about it. Now they just roll on. I mean, in fact, when I was working with Free Talk Live, when I was a host, I remember like the Facebook page got banned. I mean, that would happen all the time. And we'd just roll on. I mean, like maybe there'd be a quick comment about it, but it wouldn't be, fucking call to arms because, again, the people at Free Talk Live, Mark, Ian, they know, they get it. Like, yeah, it's just a matter of time. But they have everything set up. I mean, and oh man, it's a dynamite operation. Dynamite operation. Runs like a multi-million-dollar fucking radio station, but I mean, all done on pure passion. It is amazing. So credit to them, and I thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. If you've never listened to Free Talk Live, you go to freetalklive.com and you give that shit a listen. You can hear the real deal. Nobody that's going to be crying about their MailChimp account getting shut down. freetalklive.com, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Now, let's get into... Oh, boy. I have a big story here that has to do with a company called Clearview. This also got sent in by a Sovryn Tech listener. But I think I want to change it up. I'm not going to run with this. There's certainly something to talk about with it. There's a lot to talk about with it, but it needs a good long breakdown, and it's a really long article. So I'm going to switch it up. Let's get into this story, which, again, we're just ripping on iPhones. Look, none of them are any better. Okay, I mean, they're really not. Like there's no tech giant that's worth their fucking salt or that's doing security right. And in fact, this one I'm a little conspiratorial about, so let's get into it. The story's from Ars Technica, but everybody was talking about it. Even Tavis Ormandy of Google, who I know he works for Google, but he's somebody who I think is a very even hand because he'll rip on every side. He'll even rip on his own company. I really appreciate that. But anyway, here's the quick headline. In fact, I love Ars Technica put, this is by Sean Gallagher. He put at the top like a mini headline that said certifiably bad. And you're going to know what that means in a second. But the headline is patch Windows 10 and server now because certificate validation is broken. Woo! Crypto library bug allows spoofing of certificates, but no attacks in the wild yet. Let's read a little bit of this. Microsoft's scheduled security update for Windows includes a fix to a potentially dangerous bug that would allow an attacker to spoof a certificate, making it look like it came from a trusted source. The vulnerability, reported to Microsoft by the National Security Agency, the NSA, affects, let's keep point on that, affects Windows 10, Windows Server 2016, Windows Server 2019, and Windows Server version 1803. Microsoft has rated the update as important rather than critical, but in a blog post, Michelle Grun, I'm guessing is the name, the principal security program manager for Microsoft Security Response Center, explained that this was because, quote, we have not seen it used in active attacks, end quote. However, researchers outside Microsoft, including Google's Tavis Ormandy, have a much more dire assessment of the vulnerability and urges users to patch quickly before an active exploit appears. The vulnerability is in the component of Windows cryptography library that validates X.509 certificates, somehow bypassing the chain of trust used to validate the certificate. Microsoft's advisory on the vulnerability said the bug could be used to fake the software signing certificate on a malicious version of an application, making it look like it came from a trusted developer. However, the risk extends beyond just code signing. An NSA advisory indicates that the vulnerability could be used for man-in-the-middle attacks against secure HTTP connections, as well and to spoof signed files and emails. It's possible to perform network-level protection against spoof certificates using network devices that inspect TLS traffic, as long as they don't use Windows certificate validation. But the NSA warned, quote, rapid adoption of the patch is the only known mitigation at this time and should be the primary focus for all network owners, end quote. So this is, let's be clear on this, and in fact, if you follow some of Tavis's tweets, he bolsters this point, which I'm about to make, which is that this is about as bad as it can get for an operating system. Especially an operating system that runs under a lot of the modern auspices of Windows 10. A lot of the security, and let me explain, because not a lot of... So the NSA put out a warning about this. The NSA's warning is written a lot more dire, and I would say far more accurately. And Microsoft is just like, oh, no, don't worry too much about it, blah, blah, blah. Of course, Microsoft's warning is the one that the investors are going to read, and that's ultimately who Microsoft has to please, not the end user, of course. Woo. I'm going to wax conspiratorial on this in a minute, but give me a minute on this. Part of the problem of why this is such an issue now, I mean, for Windows Server, 2016, 2019, and so on, I mean, like, the reason that that's bad should be apparent, especially since this can be used for spoofing, file transferring and emails and so on. I mean, that's a very real problem. Security certificates are really the backbone. In fact, if you heard the at the top of the episode, the audio there, basically when security certificates are getting verified by the software, I mean, that's a key solution that's happening to make sure that there's nothing funny going on, that there isn't some kind of malicious, say, version of an app running, or a malicious command is coming telling an app to do something nasty. Okay, like install keyloggers or, run as a keylogger, do other things on an operating system. Those are just examples, okay, of how bad this could be. Now, what makes it worse with Windows 10, because while Windows 10 does a lot of security very right? Like a lot of this was the thing when UWP was more of a thing, where everything is being run in a sandbox. Of course, even though UWP, Microsoft has backpedaled on that to the point of non-existence, right, with the Microsoft Store and so on. That concept of running everything as a sandbox, kind of like how Google Chrome, the browser, runs as a sandbox on any operating system it happens to be running on to some degree. That's a great thing, okay? And meaning running it in a sandbox means that the process is run separate from the rest of the operating system. That way there isn't or that solves a lot of potential leaks or exploits from occurring, right? Where one program can affect another, okay, in an operating system. That's a very great thing. But here's the part that a lot of people aren't necessarily talking about with this. There's two parts. One's the conspiracy. The other is this is a very real problem. Is that much of Windows 10 and its ilk runs on automatic updates. Okay? From software, again, this is very true with UWP, but now a lot of software will automatically check for updates. Okay? And we've seen this even in 2019. We have seen examples where there is software out there that would put out updates that we found out were actually like malicious updates. It was like a fake version of the software that could get installed. Or, I mean, you could just end up, it doesn't even have to be that well thought out, right? Because there were people, was it HP? That there were updates put out that, I want to say, or was it Razer? Oh, it was one of those companies. I forget what it was in 2019. Bottom line being, this whole concept of auto updating, which in general is a good thing for security, right? The thing is that malicious versions of apps and who is the malicious actor, as in who forwarded the update, well, it could be, it could be a bad actor, quote unquote, a hacker, even though hackers are heroes, but, it still uses a malign term. But what we should actually technically call a cracker, right? Crackers could be sending out, not with cheese on them, crackers could be sending out, okay, updates to software that could end up, that could effectively respond, okay, to a security certificate that could get sent and that Windows would allow, that would allow it to do, remote code execution, all kinds of crazy shit. Okay, so this automatic update thing allows for, and this is what people who are really extreme, this is one of the concerns that they had around Microsoft not allowing you to not update parts of the operating system and apps and so on. This is why there's some people, some security researchers and specialists who will tell you, no, auto updates are bad because you don't know who's sending the update. And in fact, it wouldn't be hard for the NSA to send the update. And then you're fucked. Okay, now, I don't think that that's really necessary to be a problem because, this is where things get a little conspiratorial. And I am not the first, nor the only, obviously, person to suggest this. And that is that this setup, keyword, or, well, what is being labeled as an exploit. It's funny that the NSA is the one that warned about this. I mean, it's not out of place, but I wonder about this, okay? Because one thing that a organization like the NSA would love to have is, we can just spoof our own security certificates in any operating system and any computer on the planet. Man, that is a surveillance wet dream. And I would not be surprised if the NSA, if this is something they actually told Microsoft to put into their computers. And the reason why Microsoft didn't sweat it so much is like, well, we only label it as important, not critical, because we know it wasn't done in the wild. Why? Because the only people that knew about it originally was the NSA. And so probably, or what may have happened is that the NSA asked for this ability to create spoof security certificates, okay, in Windows 10, and somehow they lost control of it. And maybe they didn't necessarily find something in the wild, but they realized that, this little exploit in our toolkit, in our government toolkit, is now on the loose. And so, okay, Microsoft better patch this one up now because we're not the only ones that can do it. I really would not be surprised. I mean, look, to say that Microsoft wouldn't do that, fucking Apple will drop their plans for end-to-end financially feasible, viable, and important plans, right? At the very least, they care about that, about their finances. They will drop their plans to enable end-to-end encryption of backups to iCloud if the FBI says, hey, no, don't do that. We need to surveil iCloud. Why wouldn't Microsoft create the ability to have spoofed security certificates in Windows 10? Of course they would. But I mean, because you have to understand this. There is a reason that governments are constantly asking Microsoft, say China, the Chinese government, the EU, why they're constantly asking Microsoft, hey, let us look at your fucking kernel before we let you get used either by quote unquote our people or by organizations, government organizations or whatever, because I mean they have some smart people there that I'm sure expect this sort of thing. Because I imagine they're just, the Chinese government's just like, all right, yeah, what did the NSA put in their American software today? So I don't think that that's outlandish. I mean, should you update? Fuck, you better fucking update right now. Hell yes, if you're using Windows. And I know for some people, you have you're doing it right. You have your little Windows setup off to the side that you use under extreme conditions, right? But and otherwise, you'd never bother with it. I get it. Yeah, update that right away. But, what this really speaks to, and the real solution here that I would love for people to jump on, again, this only affects Windows. This massive issue is only a real problem with Windows. And I think right now is a great opportunity because the reason a lot of people stay on Windows, I know I've said this a lot, we cannot stop saying it, we can't say it enough. Getting people off of Windows is a great and wonderful thing, okay? So the reason a lot of people use Windows still, I mean, even somebody like me from time to time, is because you're used to it. You've been using it for a decade or more, or 20 years or however long. And you're so used to the process. It's like second nature to you. And it's just, you can get so much done with it that, it only makes sense for you to continue to use it. I totally understand that argument, but I am going to make a proposition to you. And that is, and I'm going to give you time to get ready for this. We did just find out, actually yesterday, we found out that Canonical, who are the maintainers and developers behind Ubuntu, Linux, okay, they have Ubuntu 20.04, which is an LTS release, is coming out April 23rd this year, 2020. I think it would behoove you to get ready for this to come out. Get maybe get a new computer. Maybe it's time for that. Okay. Get off of something that, is perhaps, is susceptible to Spectre. Okay. Maybe get one of those new Ryzen laptops with the new Ryzen chip in it and everything. Go for that. Okay. Get ready for Ubuntu 20.04. Now, it's not going to have like a dramatic amount of new features and all this stuff, but it's an LTS release, which means that it's going to be maintained and there will be security updates for it for 5 years. Now, you could say, well, 5 years goes by in the blink of an eye, and then I'm going to have to learn the new version of Ubuntu, and they're probably going to make crazy changes. That's why I don't use Linux, because they're making all these insane changes all the time. Well, first off, if you're really crazy about it, you don't have to update a Linux machine ever if you really don't want to. Okay, but Ubuntu 20.04, which it's got one of those funny animal names, Focal Fossa, is that the name of it? I think it's Focal Fossa, is not just an LTS release, which means long-term support. It's not just an LTS release, it's actually an ESM release, which means extended maintenance release. That means it gets security updates for 10 years. So basically, you can install Ubuntu 20.04 and you are secured until 2030. It is a great opportunity, a great time to learn Ubuntu and to have that machine that you don't worry about. The updates that come through, security updates, whatever, but you don't worry about, am I going to have to learn a new thing in 6 months? Are they going to make dramatic changes like Microsoft does to Windows 10 every fucking, twice a year and all this crap? You're not going to have to worry about any of that. You could just let it ride as is. Again, you want the security updates, but you're going to get those security updates for 10 years. That is a much better timeline than Microsoft's going to offer you. They're going to charge you an arm and a leg. This is for free. So I think, this security certificate issue the certificate spoofing issue with Windows 10, I don't think you can't overstate how bad this is. I'm glad it's patched. Okay. And it got patched very quickly, which makes me also think that Microsoft knew about it for a while and they were just waiting for the day when they had to roll it out. But regardless, it was patched very quickly. Okay. So make sure you've updated at the very least. But then step 2 is I want you to do the real update. The real update is updating from Windows 10 to Ubuntu. Okay. In fact, it's Ubuntu 20. So there, you can feel like you're more in the future if you really want. Please do this. Please consider this. So many of these issues that we talk about every single week on this show can be just readily solved by the bulk of us, as many of us as possible, not using Windows anymore. And then you don't even have to sweat it. Okay. That doesn't mean Linux is perfect and doesn't have issues. Sure, it does. Okay. But you have a lot more control when it comes to Windows. A lot of these concerns that I've raised talking about the certificate spoofing, you can mitigate a lot of that. Okay. There's so many eyes. And the beauty of Linux is that it doesn't really, especially the kernel itself, comes with a much different ethos than what we talked about with Apple and even Microsoft in this episode, where it's not so much about the money. It's about things working. And workflows having to happen. And that's where it's at. And people just wanting to use a computer and for it to fucking work and do what they tell it to. And that's what we should demand out of these machines. So I wouldn't recommend buying an iPhone anytime soon, or at least I wouldn't recommend using iCloud. How about that? I guess we could get into solutions around that. Is using Android the solution? But regardless, stay away from iCloud. There's options there. You don't have to use iCloud with Apple products. And get off of Windows 10. This is really, really bad. All right. And you've got a golden opportunity to have a very stable operating system for the next 10 years. Take it. It's coming April 23rd, 2020. Okay. Like I said, go get yourself the new laptop or a new NUC or whatever the fuck you do. If you build your computers, great. Go rock one of those and get ready for April 23rd. Get all your data in order. It's a great opportunity. Okay. If you are switching over to a new operating system, it is a great opportunity to clean up all that data. Maybe go through all the accounts that you happen to have. Okay, this is also a great opportunity to switch over to Firefox if you're still using Chrome for some reason. Okay, this is a great opportunity to change and just clean up and really tighten up your digital life. And the tighter it is, the more secure it is. And you're going to be, just an ass ton more secure using Ubuntu, using Linux in general. Okay, take this opportunity, take the warning for what it is. We've been talking this whole episode about warnings and how people don't listen and how we know, we don't have to deal with these problems that come with Windows because we can use other operating systems, okay? You've been getting warned for years on this show. Take the warnings now. It's a great chance. 2020, great year to change your entire digital game. Do it, all right? And I think we can end the episode really with that message. We don't have to go much further. We've got tons of great stories to get into in the very near future on Sovryn Tech. And of course, we'd love to have Ellen back next week. And I know all of you love it when she's on. She's absolute dynamite. Woo! And anyway, we're going to keep rocking 2020. I hope you do too. I will see all of you on the other side.
Thank you for listening to Sovryn Tech, an Osiris One production. Now go out there and make some trouble.